We're talking esports. We're talking the Twin Suns tournament. We're talking the biggest Squadrons esports tournament ever. You set the bar for everyone else to try to meet it.
Welcome to Uplink.
On the podcast today, I've got EckhartsLadder, I've got BoomStick, and I've got I've got two Jordans here. Two Jordans. TGS, BoomStick, you run a freelance company as well, and Eckharts, you have the wonderful EckhartsLadder YouTube channel. And today, we're talking esports. So, just to get started, let's get into what inspired the tournament.
I don't really know, to be honest. Star Wars Squadrons is just such a cool game, and I felt like it wasn't getting the attention it deserved, to be honest. Having played, I don't even know how many hours I've gotten to this damn game right now. We're north of 500, I believe. Having played, that many hours and participated in tournaments and made a ton of content for the game. I just want to do whatever I could to, make sure that more people see it, because I'm like a firm believer that it's one of those games that a lot of people who see it for the first time will kind of instantly get it and want to play it, or at least want to watch more of it. So that was my intention there.
I mean, it's such a gorgeous game, and such a great showing into the feeling of actually being a part of the Star Wars universe. Like, you feel like you are a pilot.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, more than any game, maybe I think it captures kind of the Star Wars feeling. It's very unique too. I mean, there's not many arcade 5v5 MOBA flight games either, so
exactly. Perfectly set up for esports, and just hopping in. And once they added custom matches, it was like, this is the perfect game to hop in with some buddies, talk crap to each other, and have fun playing some Star Wars.
Yeah, it's got such a unique, like you were saying, like the 5v5 arcade MOBA like kind of play style. It's like there's literally not another game out there like that, and so like that kind of feels like it should set it up perfectly to be like this big booming esport.
And compared to other iterations in the Star Wars universe that may or may not have a competitive element to them, like the Battlefields and various other ones, this one has the level of immersiveness, especially with the VR capacity, that I don't think you can even get in some of the other games. So I think that really leads itself to being a truly unique experience when it comes to gaming. And then when you add the Star Wars element to it, it's just it's next level attractive. It's something we all know and love. You're hard pressed to find a gamer in this world that doesn't like Star Wars, I feel like. So
I was making a video, and I made this point that something that's going to be a big factor in the success of Star Wars games will they stand on their own outside of the Star Wars license. And I think Squadrons is one of those games where just the mechanics and the gameplay and the feel of the game, you get that experience that this is a fantastic game, even if it wasn't Star Wars, but it's even better that it is Star Wars.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of other streamers and stuff, because I'm obviously, I spent a lot of time in that scene, and like a lot of people who I've talked to are just like, I find it hard to go back to other flight games after playing Squadrons. Squadrons does have issues. It's not perfect. Yeah. Especially some of the kind of underlying mechanical issues with drift and with shielding and power management and stuff. However, the overall kind of flight system and the mechanics, I think, are excellent. And like from that perspective, and it's like the game's got a sense of speed but also control that's very rare. It almost reminds me in a way too of like Halo 3. It hits that same spot as Halo 3 for me, where it's just like you're simultaneously pulling off these really crazy maneuvers but relying on positioning, map control, communication with your team. And it's just it's like when you play 5 hours of Squadrons, like if you play through a full tournament, you're exhausted, because it's like it's so much, you need so much like mental stamina to get through it, because it's just like every part of your mind is working, and it's really engaging in that sense.
It is like It has ruined. I love the gameplay of Battlefront in terms of its flight combat, or I loved the gameplay of the flight combat in Battlefront until I played Squadrons. And I hopped in not too long ago. I was like, oh, no.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up.
Starfighter Assault is just like so stupid casual feeling to Squadrons.
It is.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of this equation that, like, with the map creation that they've done in the Star Wars universe as well, like, you're transported to a completely unique environment, whereas you don't get that same feeling with something like Battlefront or another flight simulator of sorts. It's something familiar, whereas Squadrons is entirely unique in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people too that, like you were saying, like the Star Wars license obviously brings a lot of fans. But I know a bunch of people that were into the game that just don't care about Star Wars, and they were just playing it because it's a good flight sim.
Definitely. And it's also not of the level of something like, I think it's Star Citizen is one of the big ones where it's like insane in terms of what the controls offer and what you can do. It's like, that's on a completely different level, and Squadrons is a lot more approachable.
Yeah, it's a lot more streamlined.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It adds like complexity through just like a skill ceiling, which is very, very high in Squadrons and is surprisingly like continuing to evolve and develop. I listened to an interview with Knight, and he was kind of talking about like just how things continue to develop, like how the meta is continually shifting, and like this, people are still learning new things. You've got like various people on the big teams like Splinter or Cavern Angels who are like really breaking down the game mechanics and finding kind of new ways to just maybe get a little more juice out of your Y-wing in this one situation. So that's kind of how the game adds complexity through like a high skill gap, rather than having like, I compare it to the old X-Wing, and X-Wing Alliance is the last one of those games that I played most recently right before Squadrons came out. And that game is more complex, but in a way that I don't feel like would add anything. Like, for example, in X-Wing Alliance, you can zero your lasers, which is fun, I guess, but like, does that really add anything? Or, there's just different targeting controls, and there's more fine movement in a game like that. But I think for the type of game Squadron is, it ends up adding complexity just through skill.
Yeah, and like once you start getting too complex, you're gonna start just driving players out, because they're gonna get in, they're gonna be like, this is too many buttons for me to like keep track of, and so they just quit.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point as well. Is like, I think Eki, you're saying about the skill ceiling. Like, you can play Squadrons on a standard Xbox controller or a full-on, HOTAS setup with the pedals, the sticks, the joystick, you name it, right? So it allows you to take it from, a casual player standpoint all the way to, a high level, high engaged enthusiast in that space, which I think leads to and like you said, a huge range and skill gap, but a huge also range and accessibility.
And also, I mean, even if you look at all the I guess quote unquote pro players, like all the people playing at a high level, even amongst that group of people, there's a huge range of peripherals that people are using.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Wasn't there someone who was just only using keyboard?
Yep.
Yeah, I don't remember who it is, but yeah, he uses like just keyboard, which is insane to me.
Hokak, hands on keyboard and keyboard. Yeah, I think there's a couple players who do that, but I mean, you're right. We do see, like, I'd say between like, if I were to guess, like the rankings of like peripherals, I would guess controller is most common, then flight stick of some setup, whether it's flight stick keyboard, flight stick throttle, and then probably mouse and keyboard. But it's like they're all so viable that it's kind of cool to have that sort of like competitive parity. And then you can add in VR or pedals or like all of the other peripherals. Like I've got a what is this thing even called? The head tracker, which I don't use, but I know a lot of people do. So it's kind of crazy how much they've added and how well it all works in a competitive scene.
And all for a game that's $40. So normally you'd expect
I wish it weren't.
True. Like you'd expect that kind of implementation from a $60 game. On that topic, what are you guys' thoughts on the lack of support and the lack of like complete dedication to Squadrons as like a supported game?
I mean, I think everybody can kind of agree that it straight up sucks.
Yeah. I've been pretty vocal about it. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
No. I mean, I was just gonna echo what Boom said. Like, we're all pretty bummed, honestly. I think, we're disappointed that it didn't get the love I think we all thought it deserved. You've been extremely vocal on this. I'll let you take it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I've kind of got a unique situation because, like, I was with Squadrons from the beginning, pretty much. Like, they told us before it was announced, and like they kind of hinted at it for a long time, and then we got to play it early and test it early, and like the second I played it, like I knew just based on having flown it that this was an amazing game. And I am an EA game changer. I'm friends with like a lot of people that work at EA and Motive, and I don't. First of all, Motive did nothing wrong in this, in my opinion. But I just think market research be damned, EA really missed the mark on it. Like, okay, I understand it being a AA game or a less than $60 game. That's fine. But I do think that, first of all, the game had a very poor launch. I think it maybe could have used a delay or something because there were a lot of tech issues at launch. Yeah, like COVID, the game almost certainly got delayed that we don't know about. There were a lot of tech issues at launch. But there were other options for Squadrons. This is going to be sacrilegious to a lot of people, but if you look at like the Steam chart, like the Steam achievement list, you see that very few people actually go in multiplayer. And I think that's honestly just because for a lot of people, after having played games like Battlefront 2 and whatever else, they weren't expecting the quality, robust multiplayer service we got. Like, I've just been thinking about this tournament that we recently ran, Twin Suns, and like how amazing a tournament ran by EA would have been at launch. Like BoomStick ran Operation Ace the Invitational, which was amazing and super fun at launch. But that was before the game even had custom match features. That was like coming from not an official source. Like, I just think about how EA could have either designed the game so that it was using cosmetics or something to have a longer life, which I know people hate, but if it came to getting more support, I'd be happy to pay for cosmetics,
dude.
Or
100%.
just yeah, and I'm 100% certain that's something they thought about, not from any insider knowledge, but I mean, obviously it was. But even besides that, like, there's been no competitive Star Wars game really. Like esports are exploding right now. And like that's part of the reason why like Jordan and I are having our conversations about like the future of Star Wars tournaments and stuff. But like the fact that EA's had the license for this long and hasn't jumped in with a big esports title, and then this perfectly made basically arena MOBA game is designed and is super great, and they just don't even launch it with custom games. Like it baffles my mind. Like, I imagine how exciting a $10,000 EA tournament in week one, or even pre-launch with creators or something like that. Like how much hype that could have drummed up instead of like paying, because if you look at Twitch the day Squadrons released, they paid a bunch of streamers to stream the game, and they're not cheap. So I think about how that money could have been invested in a different way for a lot more return, and because they haven't thrown the competitive community a bone. I'm sorry, I know I'm rambling a bit, but they haven't thrown the competitive community a bone, despite like the amazing things people are doing in the space. And I find that very frustrating.
Yeah, and it sucks too, because I can tell that there's people from like Motive and EA that want that to happen. Like, they want to be able to support the game and the competitive community and stuff, but they just can't. And it just, it sucks.
In many ways, Squadrons was not from a development side, but from a EA perspective side, was in the shadow of Battlefront. In terms of controversy, in terms of they had such a backlash with the whole cosmetics and loot box controversy with Battlefront, that Motive was basically they were the I'm sorry game in terms of EA's marketing of the game.
Now people are begging them to add loot boxes and stuff.
Like, what world are we in?
Squadrons almost suffered a similar fate that like Titanfall 2 did as well, right? Like with like the lack of support, the launching against crazy other titles, it didn't receive, the love it deserved initially, which is also a reason I could see a resurgence down the road, very realistically. But again, when when you have a community that's so driven to create an an esport and competitive niche within the game, and then to not even, like you said, throw them a bone, or even give them the leeway to run an event or support to run an amazing
Yeah.
event, and just have it all community driven, it's kind of a slap in the face to the own community, to be honest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a little ridiculous when it comes down to my thought process. And I agree with you, Eck. Like, spending 10K, 20K, 50K on creators playing the game at launch, as opposed to putting that towards engaging the community that's actually
Mhm.
going to keep this game alive.
Yep.
I mean, that seems like a bad investment in my part. I agree with you.
You can make so many fans organically, and you can still. I mean, they got Shroud playing the game. You're not gonna get Shroud's numbers running a Squadrons tournament most likely in the first day, but EA streams anything with hype beforehand, and it's getting 10,000 plus viewers, more than that. You could have made a lot of genuine Squadrons fans through an EA tournament rather than. And again, nothing against Shroud at all. I don't know a thing about him, but I'm guessing he based on the fact that he didn't stick with the game, he was playing it for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Like, and I've got, like, I'm a streamer myself. I've done sponsored streams. Like, I get it. It's completely cool. I'm happy it exists, and that should be a part of your launch strategy, perhaps. But like, it's basically just token support at that point if you're not actually going to follow through, support streamers, support like. Because it's 2021. Like, I look at like what Rocket League is doing, or like what Halo is doing. Like Halo's been fighting tooth and nail to get their esports scene going to various degrees. They pump money into that thing. Obviously, EA is not going to do that with a AA game to the same extent, but like, do something. Give us like help publicize my event or another
Yeah.
event, or like Cal Cup has a long history that they've been putting on events monthly. They've all been great. There's no chance of like objectionable content. Like, signal boost that.
So, a question for the two Jordans. Do you guys have numbers on the amount of viewership and community rallied around esports titles?
I'm not really following. Like, that can vary wildly depending on like the title.
But like, just as a whole, would you say esports is as large as or close to the size of, let's say, football?
I mean, if you look at the top end of the esports world currently, in 2019, the League of Legends World Finals was the exact same viewership of the Super Bowl of that year. So when you look at the objective top, they're almost mirrored at this point, and esports is still growing, and traditional sports is trying to figure their way through, right? So when you look at the growth pattern, I see esports dwarfing traditional sports in the next decade or so, and I think a lot of parties would agree with me on that. When it comes down to these unique niche communities, I agree with Boom. It varies too wildly to actually stick in a direct number on it. Squadrons on a good week, like after a Twin Suns tournament when we had, phenomenal viewership and, great showmanship and a well-run tournament throughout, the Squadrons numbers jumped, right? Everyone's kind of like, oh, I want to be in this community. When there was a lot of animosity built in and, stuff was going on behind the scenes, people shied away from that community. So from a niche community perspective, I think there's too much variety to really nail it down. From an esports as a whole picture perspective, sky's the limit.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, yeah, right now, esports as a whole, just as a concept, is definitely approaching and already surpassing some traditional sports. And so just esports is there. It's just a matter of new titles being difficult, I think, to, I guess, cater to that whole entire audience. Because I mean, if you look at a lot of the esports that are like games in there, is super difficult unless you're Riot and you've already got this pedigree of League of Legends, and stuff like that. And so small games are generally, like Jordan was saying, going to be difficult to like get a slice of that pie.
Yeah.
Like, even for example, though, like to add to that, like when we're talking about smaller developers, like not the Riot, like Fall Guys just added custom lobby support that now has esports capacity, right? we can create a tournament and an organization around that now and create an environment and a community that can be supported. So, I think a lot of developers now need to realize their games, if they want them to be an esport, they need to be launched esport ready, as opposed to having the support after the fact.
I think when it comes to Squadrons too, like, I don't mean Squadrons the sequel, I mean Squadrons as well. Like, it comes down partially to expectations. Like, is Squadrons going to be the next League of Legends or Counter-Strike or, any other AAA esport? Like, probably not. But what it could have been and what it should have been was, like, popular. Like, it could have been an esport that was popular enough to support some full-time streamers, support some bigger pro teams and more for pro teams, although I really love the pro teams we do have, and most importantly, to support kind of the continual interest in the game. I kind of have an interesting take, like an interesting perspective on this as somebody who runs a YouTube channel, because for a while my YouTube channel X2, that's my second channel that I kind of run with somebody else, we were solvent off Squadrons alone.
That's fascinating.
But it's just for like we had our best ever month in probably December or maybe October, just like when Squadrons hype was at its highest, like it was doing enough to support me and somebody else full time. Now I do have another YouTube channel, but like had I needed to, it would have been more than enough. Like I remember our first ever Squadron stream, we had 4,000 viewers for Operation Ace, I believe. Most of there were Jordan, you might know, but there were a few of us pulling 1,000+ viewers.
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah.
And the problem is, it's just like I understand what they were going for with the whole thing is, okay, we want to release a game like X-Wing and TIE Fighter back in the day, which is okay, but I mean, Squadrons didn't release with as much content. And kind of the idea that there wasn't going to be any ongoing content, I think really hurt kind of interest at the beginning, because it's like, okay, we've played these 6 maps, because there were 6 at launch, there are 7 now. It's like, have I done it all?
I've said this many times in the past. It's great to have the heart behind, we're going to release a game like it was in the 90s. But for games coming out in 2020, that is not feasible from a development investment time frame, unless you like completely pack it with content, like you're saying. Those games were designed specifically for, we can't patch this game at all, and we need to make sure that it has enough content, and that content is as solid as it needs to be to support itself for 3 years, because a lot of the target audience, especially in the 90s, were kids playing Star Wars games. They can only play one game, so why should they choose to play your game?
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% right. Like, if you look at X-Wing Alliance, which I've kind of held up because it's sort of the last of the old X-Wing guard, there are like 30 flyable ships in that game. You know what I mean? But it's also like the fact that if you want to make 2 different ships back then, you change some stats. You don't need it. Like, if you look at the quality of art that you have, for example, at the interior of an A-Wing, like, you can't build 30 ships with modern, art standards and meet even the AA standard with a $40 price tag. You just can't anymore. So like I like the idea, but it's just it's just a little bit heartbreaking, because this is a game that we've been waiting for so long, and they nailed everything that matters, but not. It's like
you were inches away from the finish line, and then all of a sudden you didn't tie your shoes at the beginning, so just boom, slam right before you finish. Like Boom and I were having a conversation when Squadrons was announced, and we're like, this better have custom matches, and it better be able to do this. And as soon as it was announced, like I believe we messaged each other like, oh no, come on.
Well, yeah, I was at that point, obviously planning the first Operation Ace, and then like before launch, the news came out that they weren't gonna have private matches at launch, and that took the wind out of my sails real hard. I almost didn't do the first Operation Ace, because I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? So there was a couple weeks where I just kind of like stopped working on it. I wasn't going to do it until I was just like, no, somebody needs to do this. Like, somebody's got to do some kind of event to get like some attention. for this
Yeah.
game, and so I came up with a different format and obviously went through with that. But like that sucked.
It was a huge success still, like even with those caveats, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
the first Operation Ace was great. I don't really remember what the viewerships was like on your end. So maybe you can talk about that, but I know like from a community point of view, people were hyped. Like it was really cool. And like even in that sort of very limited space, we actually had a few games, like I'm sure you remember, where like teams would match up against each other.
Yes.
And that was crazy. Like that showed, I think, everybody the potential of the game. And like just not launching with that, like you said, it's just like, what are you thinking? Especially where it was obviously at a stage, like, let's be honest, EA Motive did not whip together the B-Wing custom matches and the TIE Defender in a couple months. Like that is obviously something that was meant for launch and didn't make it. They should have waited till January, or yeah.
Started off strong. But moving on to, we've gone through the past and the scope of Squadrons. Let's talk about the Twin Suns tournament and what went down there, and how epic of a even towards we've got Squadrons as a community wavering off. We've got the community trying to decide where it wants to go in the future in terms of a competitive sport, and then we have Twin Suns with a gigantic prize pool. You guys putting on an incredible show. What's going on with Twin Suns, and what did you guys think of the showing there?
Like I mean the tournament itself was phenomenal, and I will say I've been quite negative today, and that doesn't reflect how I feel about the community, which is amazing. And I will say EA at least did leave the game in a very good position, in my opinion. Like we saw this tournament that the broken Empire absolutely dominating at, I think, last Cal Cup or the Cal Cup before that, where it was like basically every Imperial game went to the Empire, or every game went to the Empire at top level play. Like we're not there right now. We're at a pretty interesting spot balance wise, so that's good.
We got some New Republic wins.
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
Yes.
I think so that's good. But yeah, the production was great. From a viewership perspective, I was kind of mixed. I mean, it was obviously great numbers, but it was also a tournament that I put a lot of money into and that we put a lot of time into. So it's kind of hard. I'm happy overall. We did have some tech issues day one that not really anyone's fault at all, and we recovered from beautifully. But like I do kind of wonder, like, not more so how a tournament 2 months ago could have done, or how a tournament in February could have done. Either way though, like I'm so happy we put the event together, because we had an amazing Cavern Angel story. We had an amazing finals. The production team absolutely knocked it out of the park and blew me away, and that's credit to the other two guys sitting here. So yeah, overall an amazing experience. I'm very happy we did it.
I had an absolute blast casting. Like it was such a fun time, and I was so hyped.
Yeah, I mean, I'll hop in here on this one. So I've had the opportunity to work on, I think, every big Squadrons property or tournament property at this point. I've had the opportunity to work on Cal Cup. I've had the opportunity to work on Op Ace 2 and now Twin Suns. And can definitely say this Twin Suns one was by far the most, storied, epic event that we've had in the Squadrons world by far. Like you said, the storyline with Cavern Angels coming through from the bottom of the bracket, facing off against the mega heavyweights in Splinter Squadron. And having been part of this community in a variety of different seats. I've worked on, worked directly on the production side, but I've also been, I kind of pioneered a lot of the observing for this event as well. Just kind of being along for the ride in, a weird way, in a weird sense, it's just been really cool to experience in that front. So it's really enjoyable in that sense. But like I said, the production, the team that really put this on from the back end. I'll try to get a few names out here. Area Rich with the cinematic shots. I mean, we have to talk about that. We can't not. Area Witch, is part of the community, a huge proponent and believer in the Squadrons community, but has really come on board and just elevated the experience that this game can give. And I think it really showed when we were able to transition from this being a community viewed event to a Star Wars fan event, right?
Yep.
Like you could be a Star Wars fan and watch that and go, holy cow, I feel like I'm watching, episodes whatever where they take down, whatever, right? It was that same energy and that same feeling, and I think that's what really was helpful in bridging the gap from being a Squadrons or like a fighter simulator fan to a fan of just the esport. And I think that's a tough transition to make a lot of the times. And Eck obviously has done a huge job in trying to get that transition to the general Star Wars public. So much appreciated from some of this part of the community. But I think it was a really cool opportunity to see that we can create these beautiful storylines in an event like this, which I don't think you get quite the opportunity to see in any given tournament. So was super thankful for Twin Suns for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I gotta echo the sentiments that we had an incredible team, and I think we put on an awesome show. Been doing this for years, and honestly, like no joke, that was one of the day 2 cleanest productions I've ever worked on. It was awesome.
Yeah, day 2 is like one of those things where like is definitely like probably will be a highlight of my YouTube channel, where like if I ever need to find another job and whatever, like that's something that I will show people, is something that I was a part of and be genuinely proud of. It was just an amazing experience, and like that alone, I mean, it totally worth it. But I mean, it'd be cool to see what our team, if we do stuff in the future, whether Squadrons or not, like what we'll put together after that. Because, well, I mean, we assembled one hell of a team, I gotta say. Like from every bit of it, like not to toot our own horn, but pretty much every aspect of this tournament was run super well. From the actual tournament ops side, where we had very, very few issues. From the the art side, we had a live replay system for day 2. And obviously you guys hosting, it's like, again, something that I'm very, very proud of. And like I can show this to my dad. He doesn't understand esports, but he'll be like, okay, like I get why this is cool. I can show him that anime hero shot of Knight taking down the Star Destroyer with Cavern Angels, and like pretty much anybody gets that. And it's so great, not only because of Squadrons being such a cool game, but because the production team nailed it.
I love what you guys are saying too, with the opening up the Squadrons community to just general Star Wars fans. I was hopping in the chat a bunch during the tournament, and I loved seeing all of the chat saying, "Oh, I've never seen Squadrons before. This is fun."
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great to see. And I noticed too that it was kind of going the other way, like in the sense that people are watching this that play Squadrons, and they're like, oh man, esports is awesome, like, and they want to get involved in that. Because I know like we were talking about Area Witch, like she's wanting to like get into observing other esports and stuff now, and that's super cool to me also.
Yeah, and even to name like a few more names, like Jay from the TGS team has just absolutely crushed it with replays on our side for not only Squadrons but a variety of other games, Valorant, you name it. So just having someone with those expertise on that side, Freya with the back end graphical work as well, just putting together all the assets and making things look pretty as well. Boom as well, obviously. And Sean Caldera, one of the other observers, Connor on our team doing the technical direction for day 2. Like it really was truly just a team effort, and it was awesome just to see all the gears turning in the right directions and all together, which is a rare reality, especially in remote broadcasts. Obviously, we're living in the COVID era. We've all had to figure this out, how to do this remotely. And Boom knows, Uplink, Eck, it's not easy. And I think day 1 was the proof of that, that these things are not easy and curveballs come your way all the time. But having a team of experts and a team of passionate people that want to put on a beautiful show really came to fruition on day 2, and I'm just ridiculously proud. Like you said, I sent this to my mom. I was like, this is our work. We did a good job.
Yes. So we've got time for one more thing, and I love all the discussion on, like, I could geek out about behind the scenes stuff all day, hours upon hours. I love hearing all of this. I love taking part of it. But before we finish, I want to talk about the finals, man. Let's get into talking about those incredible. So we had Cavern Angels, who, like, yeah, they've been up there before, but we didn't see them as being like top tier game team, and they completely knocked it out of the park. Any idea of how the tournament was going to go was completely knocked out of the window.
Yeah, when they knocked out randos out of the money, that's when.
That's when we all went, uh-oh.
What?
They're
Wait
consistently like top 8, top 4.
Mm-hmm.
But like getting to the grand finals by fighting your way through randos and cheese and then almost taking it to Splinter.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Splinter to 5. Like, it's not just like taking on Splinter, like taking on Splinter to 5 and then having it come down to the last 3 seconds in the coin flip of that final game. That was the moment I knew it was over, unfortunately. But it was also took till on that moment for us to be like, okay, this is going to go one way or the other. I mean, I think we got to start at that game 3 moment. Like, I think that's, like, if we're going to talk about the finals, that's where things kind of really just took off in the sense.
Yeah.
That final game 3 moment with Cavern Angels fighting for an out of phase on the Star Destroyer, while Splinter is absolutely massacring the MC in the background was so unbelievable. And the call made by Hammer on the coming down to literally 2%. I mean, I've been part of every top-end Squadrons event so far as production goes and back-end and watching it. That is still the closest match, I think, period, bar none, ever happened as far as I've seen. I don't know if you guys seen anything closer.
Same here.
Maybe Splinter's takedown of randos in the Cal Cup when there was Rebels was pretty close, but this was, I think, probably. I mean, you couldn't have written it better. Like, and you got to give so much credit to Splinter too, because you watch that and you assume, like, with how close it got, that Splinter had the flagship down to 50% no shield, but like they just destroyed it that quickly. Splinter, you know, they added to the drama there, because the flag, by the time Cavern Angels took the flagship down from 21 to 7, Splinter had 100 to 2%ed it.
Huge props to Jordan, because we
we
were about to cut off of that because we're like, all right, you know, Splinter's about to take down the flagship, and he's like, no, stay here. And so we stayed there and we just watched it happen. It was so
someone
good.
should record the production chat.
Honestly, I wanted to record the production comms. It was literal mayhem and chaos in that voice channel during that game 3. I'm screaming at our technical director to say, "Stay on my camera, stay on my camera," while the other the Empire observers, Sean and Ari, are like, "I got a 6 shot of the MC." I'm like, "No, stay here. They got this out of phase. I know it. I can feel it in the Force. I swear."
That's exactly what happened.
It's funny too, because I was popping into production, like, in and out of the game, but like when that game started and when it was going the way it was, I was like, I'm gonna make sure I don't go into production, I don't check out Scalp Stream, because like I want to see this like live. It was so exciting.
Same. I had jumped onto your stream to watch it, Eck. I had the other one on the background muted, so we can keep the views going there. You know. For sure. But I was watching your stream and I was like, I'm going to turn on Do Not Disturb for Discord. I'm going to make sure nothing is spoiling this and just sit here and enjoy it with everyone else. I kid you not. I had drunk a bunch of water during the casting, and like I had to go pee so bad. I was sticking there. I couldn't stand. I couldn't sit down. I was standing. I was like, oh my gosh, yes.
And like a lot of it's really down to, like, one thing we haven't talked about is the like extreme quality of, like, especially like the top 8 teams or so, but especially like those top 4 teams, like the amount of effort and practice that they put in, like you know, it behind the scenes, like if you go into a Splinter stream or a Cavern Angels stream, they're like sitting on maps dumbfiring Goliaths to make sure they have the pattern for every AI pack down. And you know that, like, they know that their opponents are good at certain maps, and that they usually run certain loadouts. They've got all these game plans. It's just really incredible, like how dedicated these top teams are, especially like given the size of the competitive community. Like the fact that there is such a interesting chase for who will be the best, which right now does seem to be Splinter, is really cool.
I mean, they're fighting hard, but I mean, you look at there's a couple posts on Reddit, and I think Splinter Squadron, Fenkar obviously is the name that comes to mind when it comes to the level of depth that you can be involved in this game in. But like Nop and the entire Splinter Squadron put out their strategy for why they made the decisions they did, both on map selection, on the crazy NR call on the finals that we're all trying to figure out what the play was there. And the fact that they're willing to share that strategy and help grow the community, because again, when you pass this information down, it's going to create better competition, better parity between the teams and between the top 4 and top 8 and so on and so on. So I do mad props to Scalp and his team for sharing some of that knowledge and sharing the bread there. So big thanks to them, obviously, but the level of depth just blows me away that they get involved in this game. It's wild.
Yeah, we were having a watch party like the next day or something, just a bunch of people in the Splinter Discord, and just hearing the conversations that they were having, like Fenkar is just spouting out like exact damage numbers for every auxiliary in the game. I was like, oh my god, how do you know all of this stuff off the top of your head? It was blowing my mind.
Play is so funny too, because sometimes they'll just be talking, you'll hear one of them say clear comms, basically just like shut the hell up. Like you guys are talking about BS, we got to get our mind on the game, and that always makes me laugh.
The storyline, we said it, like you can't script it even better than what happened, but like the feeling of being torn between rooting for Splinter Squadron, who are incredible figureheads of the community, like some of the best people in the community, period, super supportive, and then you also have Cavern Angels who are like coming up from the underdog, and you're like, oh, but I want to root for them too. Yeah,
that was tough. I'm a pretty good friend with Scalp as well, like on a personal level. So it's really hard to root against the guy. He's like, I said it before, but he's like the perfect face for Squadrons. He's like, literally, he's like a rookie in like the NHL or something. He's like just this, and I've told him this before, so it sounds like I'm making fun of him, but I'm not. But he's like this baby-faced 20-year-old who's just like a savant at the game. And it's like, it's hard not to like him. And he's got such like a positive stream and stuff. So it's hard to cheer against those guys. But
but Scalp came in cheering for Cavern Angels. Like, I'm pretty sure I read a message somewhere on the Discord. Like, even Scalp wanted CA to win to an extent, like, which is the storyline that was going on. But mad props to Scalp, like you said. He's a perfect figurehead for the community, and the way he came on for the interview at the end there, and really just put it.
I mean, the first thing he said was like, props to Cavern Angels.
Exactly, the very first thing he led with, classy guy, classy act, and mad props to him, and always welcome on a stream if he's going to be that classy. So mad thanks there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like again, it's my squadron, which is like definitely not top 16. I mean, we've come close a few times, but not that close. But anytime he's like, if you guys want to go against us, if you guys want to play a few games against us, anytime. And that's not just to us because we're friends with Scalp, but like if you talk to Scalp, like he'll play against you, he'll explain, he'll beat you, but he'll then explain to you like why
he'll
and
beat
how
you
he
to pulp,
beat
and
you.
then like come over here, I'll tell you what you did wrong. But nicely.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that is kind of cool though, and that we've seen at every tournament, there's usually one or two secret strategies that one or multiple teams will have. This tournament, I think it was like increased focus on PKing, but it's like we also saw torpedoes come back in a really big way for this tournament, which I thought was cool, because people haven't been chaffing them lately, I guess. So there's always like a few things that kind of, at least I'm not expecting to see. And metas keep
out of phase and player kills were the names of the tournament.
That double out of phase frigate to cut the offense was brutal.
Dude, Squadrons Esports, it's such a blast, and thank you guys all for copping on this podcast. As soon as the tournament ended, I reached out to these guys and I was like, we need to talk about this on the podcast.
Yeah.
Uplink, what I do need to say before we close this out is the highlight of the tournament absolutely had to be you as a Force Ghost in the Vite Ramen Plugs video, because oh my god, that was the most hilarious content I think I've ever had to put out on a stream. Big thanks to R1 as well for helping out on that and
Yes.
being the pilot in the cockpit. But yeah, just I want to say thank you directly for your Force Ghost appreciation and your ability to throw that together. That was
Definitely.
awesome.
One of my highlights was the when the spectators died, and I was like, oh crap.
Oh yeah, that was hilarious.
I brought out my little X-wing toy.
Yeah, that was what, like I think that was the semis, maybe? Was that Cavern Cheese?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
Being the one that was sitting in production, it was the craziest thing because I watched all 4 computers just literally duck out of the server and kick back to menu, and I was like, oh, that's solid. And initially I was like, boom, that's a lobby drop. So boom went
Thank
to down
God
to
it
league
wasn't.
ops, but
Yeah.
then lobby was still up. We were able to get back in quickly. It was minimal downtime, but honestly, your X-wing flying on camera was really impeccable. Uplink, I think, you should really consider doing that full time.
I have. I can't play Squadrons worth a darn, but I can fly around a fake toy ship. Yeah, thank you guys so much. This has been an absolute blast. Links to all of these guys' stuff, it will be in the description. Go check them out. And stay tuned for future tournaments. Hopefully, we'll see something in the works soon.
And either way, keep an eye on the Twin Suns brand, because I think we've got some other ideas. Squadrons are not like this isn't the last you've seen of us. Our team's just too good.
Exactly.
Too much fun. I mean,
True that.
yeah.
Thank you for listening to Uplink Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Uplink Podcast or on Instagram at Uplink Podcast. If you like the show, and we hope you do, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you can leave a review. It helps us out a ton. It gets your feedback, and it helps us attract new listeners. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so on our Patreon, patreon.com/uplinkpodcast. Be very appreciative of that. You can get exclusive content like Uplink Plus, our exclusive Patreon podcast, as well as some bonus insider deals on Uplink Podcast merchandise, as well as a mention in the outro, this right here. We'd like to thank Daniel, who supports us at the $10 a month level and helps bring the show to you lovely people. Thank you so much, Daniel. And if you'd like a shout out at the end of the episode, please consider supporting on Patreon. Helps us out a ton, helps us to expand the show and bring you weekly content. We also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/TheStarsBattlefrontPodcast. Yes, I know, we're Uplink Podcast now, but can't change the URL for YouTube, so please consider checking out the content that we're producing over there. We have weekly streams every Saturday at 12 p.m. MST, as well as bonus content and expansion of the show. You can find the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find this show. Links to all of the guests' information will be in the description of this episode, so definitely go check them out as well. As always, thanks for listening. Goodness gracious.